Hello and welcome to Dad's Farmalls. Today we're going to be rebuilding a hydraulic pump off a 1965 International Cub. To take this off of the tractor, it sits on the tractor like this. The first thing I did was I removed the two bolts that hold on the hydraulic tubes. I disconnected them first here at the pump, and secondly I disconnected the three bolts that connect the tubes to the touch control. That way I could move those tubes out of the way so I can remove this. Secondly, as it sits in the tractor side's here, the front of the tractor's here. There are two longer bolts that hold the pump to the tractor, and that is the outside top and the inside bottom. So these two bolts you need to remove to be able to then remove the pump from the tractor. There's an additional two other bolts that hold the pump itself together, and for right now you want to leave those on. So once we get this off the tractor, the next thing we're going to have to do is on this section of it we have a gear, a tab washer, and a nut. And we need to take all three of those off. So what I did to do that was put it in a vise, and I took two pieces of wood and I blocked the gear in, and then I took a screwdriver and gently went through and just slowly worked the tab on the washer down. It's something, if you just take your time, use a very thin regular screwdriver, you can work that down without messing up your washer or tearing it apart. And then once I had that down, I just used a 14 millimeter socket wrench to take the bolt off. The next step was to get the gear off. To do that, mine was on there pretty good, so I just went ahead and I just used a gear pulley. Just three little arms come down underneath the gear, and then you just turn it and it'll slowly bring this off, and it came off pretty easily. The next part, which I don't really have any video of, so I'm just going to talk about it. There's also a woodruff key, which is just this moon-shaped piece, as you can see here, that sits right in the shaft like this. And mine was in there pretty good. So basically what I had to do was I just had to, get it back in the wood vise, or in the vise with the wood blocks, to punch it out, and it came out pretty easy once I got it in there. So that's where we're at. We've got the pump off, we've got our bolt, our washer, our gear, our woodruff key over here, and then here we have a rebuild kit which I bought from tmtractor.com. It comes with all of the O-rings and stuff that I need to redo this. There are a couple here that are duplicate, and it depends on which pump you have, which one you use. So whichever we're in here is what we're going to use, but there will be some of these that we won't use. And then of course it's got the gasket to go back on. Now the other thing is, because I took the hydraulic tubing off, there's also another gasket that goes between the tubing and the touch control. So I have one of those, so that I have that also comes in this kit. What we're going to do is we're going to take these bolts out that hold the body together. Okay, so we got the two bolts out. Now we need to take it apart. One of the things is that you don't want to pry them apart or anything like that. You don't want to mess this up. So what we want to do is we just want to turn it over. I've got a wood table under here, and I'm just going to take the top and push it down like that, so that it opens up. Turn it back over. And now I've got our top portion that we're going to work with, and then the lid. So basically what we're going to do is we're just going to take the parts out of here. The part with the larger shaft, this is the top that we're going to make sure that everything goes back the way it is. So first we're going to take this gear out. We're going to inspect that and clean that out. Set that right there for now. Then we'll pull our second gear. Same thing here. We'll end up, this looks like it's in really good shape. And there again, when you take these out and lay them down the same way you take them out. So bottom of them are going to go that way, tops are this way. Now past that, the only other thing that's down here is some brass fittings. According to the manual, the brass fittings at the very bottom, leave them alone, don't need to take them out, don't need to mess with them. And then the other thing we're going to do is we have this seal right here. We're going to take this off. This is going to get thrown away and replaced with a new one. Now that we got those laid out, and that's the only thing on that was left on this side, when you pull yours apart, it might be a little bit different. You know, these might come out on the other side, but for right now, what we're going to do is we'll take this out, which is 2 more brass fittings. And when I pulled that out, everything ended up coming out with these. So what we have is we have on the very top, we have a kind of washer. And then we have an O-ring. The bottom one is going to have the same thing. Washer and O-ring. And then we have this like figure 8 piece, and we'll want to make sure that we put this back on the same way we took it off, but it's a figure 8 type piece, and we're going to set that right there because that was the next portion. And then these 2 brass fittings, actually they come apart, and right in the middle is a little plastic key. This is gonna get thrown away, and these 2 will go over here, like so. These 2 fittings, the one on the top is slightly larger than the one on the bottom, so that one always has to go with your top main drive and in the top position. So that's where we're at right now. We've got her taken apart. Like I said, we're going to clean her up, and then I will be back in a little bit and we'll put it all back together. So I'll be right back. All right, welcome back. We've got everything cleaned up. I've added a little thing of Hy-Tran here so that we can use for some lubrication. And we're going to start putting this back together. Before we get started, I want to bring out one thing, and that's on the main drive. This area right here is where the O-ring will sit that usually ends up leaking. On mine, I had a little bit of wear. I had some lines here, and it wasn't smooth. So I went ahead, I tried to get some crocus paper, but I couldn't find any locally here, so I just used some very fine emery paper and kind of sanded that down and smoothed it out. So check this on yours before, make sure it's smooth there. If not, you might have to sand it down a little bit to smooth it out a little bit. You just don't want any burrs or anything in like that because you don't want to tear up your new O-ring that you're going to put in there. So, all right, so what we're going to do is pretty easy. We're going to basically just put everything back in that we took out. The only difference is I want to make sure everything's lubricated a little bit. There's different ways to do it. I'm just going to dip this in here, get a little lube on it. And this, of course, went in our top section. Fit that right down in there like that. Our next one, our bottom section, put it in its spot. Okay, so our next one is going to be our two brass fittings. The easiest way to do this is we're going to turn them over the way they are supposed to be. We're keeping the top one on top. That's going to go here, and we're going to hold them together, and there's a hole right over here where that little plastic key had went. We want to make sure we've got that hole right where it needs to be. And we're just going to take these, get my fingers messy here. I'm just going to try to keep these two together. Slide them over. Got them over the first, over the second, and then just fit them right down in there like so. So after we get our two brass fittings put in there, we need to take and replace the little plastic key that goes in there. So we're just going to take this and fit it right down in that hole, just like that, nice and easy. And then after that, we need to put the seal back on. The one that came off was kind of like a racetrack. The ones that come now are round. I don't really have to do too much of that because I'm getting it all wet. Just fit that right in there. Like that. Okay, so the next thing we need to put in is our little figure 8 thing again. There again, we want to make sure this goes back in the same way that it came off. So basically when you look at this, it's got little fingers or springs that come up. So there's a flat side, and then there's a side that the fingers raise up to. And what we need is we need the flat side to be up. So that's how we're going to put her back on there. So the spring sides are down, flat sides up. That's basically this part. We're going to leave that like that. Leave that alone for a second. And now we're going to get to our little problem O-ring that is right in here. And there's different ways I've seen people take it out. Some people try to get it with a curved needle nose pliers. Some people use a little pick. I'm just going to use a little long needle here and see if I can't poke it and pull it out. You want to go in from this side. Got her started anyway. There we go. Just get her hooked. Pop her right out. So this is the one that usually, like I said, causes the problems. We're going to replace that one. This gets thrown away. And we're going to take our new one from our kit. I'm going to get a little bit of fluid on there to make it go in there easier. And plus it'll slip around easier on. And we're just going to work it back into that groove. Like so. And she's in. Now, what we have left up here that we had taken off is our O-ring and our little washer. If I look over here at what we have, I have O-rings and washers that are thicker and an O-rings and washers that are thinner. Those are definitely the thicker ones, so we are not going to use these thinner. We'll use the thicker ones to replace these. Like I said, not everybody lubes them like this, but I just like knowing that everything's kind of lubricated before that piece goes in first. O-ring second. And then the same on the bottom. Okay, and that's everything that we took out is now back in. We've got some, a little bit of Hy-Tran in there to have it a little bit lubricated anyway, until it gets filled back up. So then all we got to do is put this back on. Turn her over like that. Bring her down. Probably going to have to play with it just a little bit to get these to line up and come back in. Part of it is that new O-ring fitting in there. There we go. There we've got everything put back together. We'll add our 2 screws back. All right, so I got my 2 bolts back in, finger tight anyway. I'll have to tighten those the rest of the way down later. Now we have these 2 O-rings that need to be switched out. Once again, just take that, pop it out. That gets thrown away. That gets thrown away. I'll add a little bit of this to make it easier to get in there. Take our O-ring. Pop it right in there. That seals nice. That little bit of lubrication just makes them slide in there nice and easy. Okay, so there we have it. Everything's put back in place. I'll tighten these back down with a socket wrench. And then the only thing left is we have to put our woodruff key back in. I'm just going to slide it in there right now. I'm going to want to make sure that my woodruff key is in there nice and good. I kind of pushed it in. I think what I'm going to do is I'm just going to take this back over, get the wood blocks, put it in the vise, tap that in to make sure it's in there nice and good. And then while I have it in the vise, I'll end up putting my gear on, lining it up so it fits over the woodruff, taking a piece of wood to put over the top and just tapping this back down on. And then once I have my gear back on, I'll add my tabbed washer and my nut and get it tightened down. And then once I have it tightened down, I'm going to take my screwdriver and I'm going to go ahead and bend that tab back up along the side of the nut so it locks it in place. And then it's pretty much all put together. Like I said, got a couple bolts here that hold the body together that I want to tighten down too. But then it's ready to go back on the tractor.